What is going on, Diablo 2 fans? Dobrunsky here, and today I'm going to be breaking down what I think is one of the coolest cow farming builds in Diablo 2, and that is the Rabies Druid. Now I know what you're thinking, you're probably like, Rabies has no place in D2, this build video is going to be garbage, but you'd be surprised with some decent gear and tailoring your gameplay, it's actually somewhat effective. Like all my previous build videos, timestamps are in the description, so if you guys want to bounce back and forth between the gear, the attributes, the skill tree, the gameplay, they're there for you guys to use, so please take advantage of them. And a quick reminder, the theory crafting and live streaming of this build took place on my Twitch channel. The link for that is in the description as well. All of my future live streams are on Twitch and videos are going to be on YouTube, so I would really appreciate it if you guys could give me a follow. That being said, let's break down this Rabies cow farming Druid build. Let's jump in. There's three main points that I want to discuss specifically for this Rabies Druid build before we dive into the specifics of it, because I know that these are going to come up in the comment section below. The first point is Death Web versus Grief. Which one should you use? Which one's better? Really, it's up to you. They both work and they have their pros and cons. Grief, you're going to be attacking faster, and it also has minus 25 poison damage, so it's really good overall, especially if you want to supplement your damage with Fury. So if you want to strike once with Rabies, you're going to be attacking very quickly, and then you can just Fury. Versus Death Web, you're going to be attacking extremely slow, but it is faster poison damage kill because the additional extra minus poison res. You can also use it on the offhand with something like a 4 poison facet monarch. Myself personally, I find it a bit of a pain in the butt switching back and forth between the main hand and the offhand. And also, if you do that, you're going to be losing CTA on the offhand, so your mercenary will just get wrecked in cows, which you can argue that mercs get wrecked regardless in cows. But really, there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, Grief on the main hand, switching to D-Web on the offhand works. Grief on the main hand with CTA on the offhand is fine. You can attack Grief on the main hand, not use a CTA, don't have a merc, and then switch to the offhand with D-Web and a 4 poison facet monarch. It's really up to you. Any option is viable. I went with Grief and then just a poison facet monarch on the main hand, which you'll see later when we dive into the gear. But again, totally up to you. And any of those options is absolutely viable. The second point that I want to touch on is what's the best body armor for this build specifically. Now, I think it depends on how you want to tailor your setup. So if you want to go like melee Rabies hybrid, I think a body armor like Enigma, Fortitude, or Chains of Honor is going to be a better suit than Bramble. Or if you want to purely focus on poison damage, which this build is centered around for farming cows, I think Rabies is the go-to body armor because of the additional plus 25 to 50 poison damage. It's going to make a big difference on the overall poison damage of Rabies. So again, it really kind of depends on how you want to spec the build. I do plan on following this build video up with a hybrid melee Rabies Druid setup, but I actually used Bramble in this video specifically, which you guys will see later when we cover the gear. The third and final point that I want to discuss is the use of lower res wands and an Infinity Mercenary specifically for this build. Now, in my opinion, both are completely useless. First of all, Conviction Aura does not reduce poison resistance on monsters, so it does not benefit you whatsoever. You can even argue that a mercenary isn't really even needed for this specific build, because mercs do get wrecked in cows easily if they get surrounded by a bunch of mobs. But I would go for something like crowd control, like a Reaper's Toll with a Delirium helmet maybe, if you want to run a mercenary. But secondly, lower res wand, it does lower poison resistance, but you cannot cast it when you're in werewolf form. So you'd have to be in werewolf form, strike with Rabies, let the poison spread, transform back to Druid, and then cast your lower res wand. So I just don't think it's worth the time at all, honestly. That's the three main points that I want to discuss about this build specifically. So now we'll dive into the attributes of my Druid. I didn't do anything crazy for the attributes. It is a max Vitus setup, so I have enough strength to equip my gear, which is 156, enough dexterity to equip my gear, which is 136, nothing in energy, and then I maxed vitality. And with my gear, I have 71 fire, 65 cold, 59 lightning, and 75 poison. I didn't intentionally cap poison. That's just because of the rumored Bramble. It gives you 100 to poison res, so that's the reason why it's capped. I do have 90 FHR, which I guess is relatively important. I mean, breakpoints for a Fury Druid, they're very important. For kind of a Rabies hybrid, they're not as important, but with the gear that I have, it's really easy to reach that 86 FHR breakpoint. I do have some life stolen per hit and mana stolen per hit from my dual leech ring, which we'll get into when I cover the gear. That's basically the setup. I do have a little bit of open wounds and crushing blow from my boots, That's really just if I feel like using Fury to supplement the damage. Again, a lot of different ways to tailor your build. For the skill tree, starting off with summoning, I maxed Poison Creeper because that is a synergy for Rabies for extra poison damage. And then I maxed Oak Sage to boost the health of my Druid and my party. Elemental, I don't have a single point invested into this tree. And then for shapeshifting, I maxed Rabies, and then I maxed Fury, 1 hard point into Feral Rage, 1 hard point into Werewolf, and then I put all of my remaining points into Lycanthropy just to increase the duration that I'm in werewolf form. Now, you don't have to max Fury. I went this route when I was playing around on stream, just supplementing the additional poison damage with Fury melee damage because I am using Grief. If you're running around with the D-Web, you wouldn't put any points into Fury. So again, it really just depends on the rest of the equipment that you're using. But that is more or less the breakdown of this build. So now we'll dive into the gear. I think the gear is one of the coolest things about this build because depending on how you want to spec it, if you want to go pure poison or mostly melee supplementing with poison or kind of a 50-50 split down the middle, it's really going to affect the gear choices that you make for this build. So I kind of went for mostly poison and then supplementing with a little bit of melee damage, which will kind of make sense when I go over the gear. For the main hand, Grief, this is really awesome for this build. It has minus 25 enemy poison res, and then it's just a lot of raw damage on its own because I went with the split of melee and poison for the setup. Then the helmet is Jalal's with the poison facet. I think if you wanted to completely max poison damage, maybe like a 2 open socket 5 to Rabies Druid pelt, kind of like your 5 NATO, but 5 Rabies with 2 open sockets and then putting 2 poison facets, that's going to up your Rabies damage. But since kind of doing that split down the middle, this is an awesome helmet. I mean, it has FHR, bonus to attack rating, or to the shapeshifting skill tree, FHR, strength, resistances, and then I put a poison facet for extra damage. For the amulet, I'm using Mara's. The 2 to all skills helps boost Rabies damage and all resistances. Highlords is a really good counterpart to this amulet if you want to kind of go more melee route. The shield, I'm using a 4 poison facet plain 4 open socket monarch. It looks really nice in my opinion. 4 green poison facets for plus 14 poison damage and minus 16 poison res. They're not perfect facets, but I don't have 4 perfect facets for this build. Body armor, is Bramble. This one rolled 42 plus poison skill damage, which does make a big difference on the total poison damage of this setup. Got some other interesting attributes like maximum cold res, fire res, 100 poison resistance, life after kill. It's an interesting body armor, especially when you're getting a lot of kills. That extra life after kill is somewhat beneficial. For the gloves, I'm using Trangul's, specifically for the plus 25% poison damage. So if you add, we have 25 on Trangul's, and then I have plus 14 poison damage with my shield, plus 3 with the helmet, and then plus 42. We're stacking a lot of additional poison damage, and then plus all the minus poison res from the facets, the shield, and Grief. Like, it's really just driving home that point of trying to maximize their poison damage. And then I'm using a Ravenfrost ring so I don't get frozen, because that's really going to slow you down when you see the gameplay. You don't want to be you don't want to be frozen. You want to hit, strike, let Rabies spread, and then circle around to the next cowpack. So I think it's important to have a source of cannot be frozen with this setup. The belt, Arachnid's Mesh, just for the extra skill to boost Rabies damage. You could go String of Ears if you kind of wanted to go more the hybrid route of melee and poison. And I'm using a Dual H ring. This is mostly just for if I get hit with mana burn. It's just really annoying and just saves me having to pot for the most part. You could use like 2 SOJs or 2 BK rings if you really wanted to up your Rabies damage. But again, in that case, you will be frozen. If you get hit with mana burn, you have to pot. So it's up to you on how you want to set up your build. And then I have just the standard Torch Annie. Full inventory of my shapeshifting skillers. I have a couple nice ones here. 36 to life, 20 to life, another 20 to life, faster unlock. So just to boost Rabies damage and also boost Fury damage as well. A lot of people don't realize that. Plus, shapeshifting skills is actually beneficial on the Druid. And then I have a full inventory of Fire Res and faster unlock mana charms with 2 FHR max damage attack rating small charms. And that's just to get that 86 FHR breakpoint, because I have 50 FHR with Bramble, 30 with Jalal's, and then these 2 gives me 90, which helps me reach that 86 FHR breakpoint. And then for the Mercenary, this is just your standard Reaper's Toll Treachery G-Face setup with 2 Ruby Jewels of Fervor and the Toll and G-Face to get that 75 IS breakpoint. This is mostly just so that he doesn't get destroyed if he gets surrounded. With a lot of cows swinging and attacking, it's really easy for your Mercenary to get wrecked. So with this setup, he has Life Leech, damage reduction when Fade procs, and then the Decrepify helps reduce the cow damage, which is really important if he's surrounded and just taking a lot of damage. It kind of helps make sure he does not get wrecked, even though I'm going to, when we go through the gameplay, I'm going to run without the Mercenary with Harmony on swap, and then we're going to do run with the Mercenary and CTA on swap, just so you can see the difference of both runs. But that is all of the gear. Again, a lot of different ways you can kind of tailor the setup, but let's do a couple cow runs and show you the build in action. I'm going to set the player's difficulty to 3 for these 2 example runs, just to increase the drop rates of cows. You can go up to player 7, but it's just a lot slower clear speed, and for the sake of speeding up the runs for this video, we're just going to go players 3. So, the Moo farm. This is like my least favorite place to farm, but it's okay with this Druid. So I make sure that I transform into werewolf form on my CTA side, because with Spirit and CTA I get additional +3 to skills when I transform into werewolf. So basically, hit 1 strike, Rabies, everything spreads. Just for this, like showing you guys this first little pack here, I'm just gonna do circles, but your best bet is to keep doing loops and not kind of wait for each individual pack. So like there, it spreads, strike spreads. Kind of want to basically herd the cows together. He really shines when you get them into a big pack, but don't want to get stuck. Hit these guys and kind of circle back to the very first pack that we attacked, and you can kind of see that everything slowly, as the poison damage takes its time, we'll kill everything. So that's why I think you can argue the need for not even using a Mercenary. My Oak Sage actually died there, but because really, he's not killing the other stuff when we're doing loops, right? It's all the poison, so. And again, it makes the case for the argument of using Death Web on Switch, like striking and then just running around. Again, I prefer to use Grief. And then there is the option, too, of always supplementing with Fury, so. If I get the Mercenary proc to Cupify, then you can come in here and Fury if you want to. Works better on small packs, not really big packs, because you don't want to get surrounded, but you can supplement with Fury, because that's why I think Grief is a better overall choice. Oak Sage died again, but because I can come in, Rabies, and then I can still do decent damage with Grief, versus D-Web is all focused on poison damage and does absolutely nothing melee. The next run is going to be the exact same setup. I'm just not going to run CTA on the offhand. Merc will definitely get toasted. We'll just keep recasting those Oak Sage. And I'll use Harmony on Switch, and I'll just spread Rabies around, and hopefully I don't get surrounded. Really cool mechanic though. Get to see everything spreading. If I circle back through everything that I touched earlier, it's all dead. For the most part. I don't want to get stuck. Okay, we're good. When you want to recast your CTA, you have to go back to Druid form. Die.
Thanks. It's locked.
I think you could argue for, if you consider this a melee build and you don't consider it AoE elemental, which I don't. I think that if you were comparing this to like a Whirlwind Barb or a Frenzy Barb or a Zeal Paladin, I think that this Rabies Druid, excuse me, has faster cow clear speed out of all the different melee build options. It really shines if you can herd everything up together to get better poison damage spread. This is basically the extent of the build. Is strike a cow pack and then let Rabies spread, and then you circle back, check for your loot. And these little guys here, not hockey. These little guys here, you can Fury, supplement with. Small charm. 5 FHR. There's Fury the individual single guys. That's why I think it's going to be really cool when I show off the hybrid version of this build, where you're focusing mostly on melee, and then you're just using Rabies as kind of an AoE supplement. So, as you can see, Rabies is just spreading through everything, and then you can sit there and just strike with additional melee damage and Fury, or using Fury with Grief. So I find that, oh, Unique Amulet. Identify that for video. This is metal grade, it's a grailer. Nokazan Relic. Anyways, carrying on. Pretty sure metal gate could drop on cows, maybe it can't. The small packs, I think it's good to use Fury as supplement. Anything big crazy packs like this where it starts to get a little crazy, I think you just duck and weave and use Fury. Or use Rabies, excuse me. Everything is dead. I think that is a full cow circle. That is everything, yeah. Okay, so we'll repeat the same run again, but I won't use CTA, use Harmony on Switch so I can run around faster. Mercenary will absolutely die, but we'll just use Oak Sage and we'll see, kind of compare the player speed difference between the two different setups. So this is going to be the Harmony version. You can see that I run around a lot faster. The only downside is that the Mercenary will absolutely get wrecked this setup. So main hand, strike with Grief. Spread Rabies. Harmony just to get some movement. Not get surrounded. And see that quickly, this will switch back to Harmony again. I actually lost the Oak Sage right away. The only downside to this, you get faster run, walk, and movement, but every time I switch to Harmony to get faster, or to get extra mobility, excuse me, I'm losing poison damage. Then we can go just back to the main hand, run around slowly, let the poison damage spread. This is not my preferred spec for the build. I like the using CTA perk, but I wanted to show it just for extra mobility and the sake of doing two different cow runs with two different setups. It does have the advantage though of when you run around and check loot once everything's killed, you can get around a little bit quicker. And I did try on stream running this exact same setup, but with an Act 1 Mercenary using the Rumored Harmony, so then I could still keep CTA and then keep the faster run walk, but it did not, it worked out okay, but the Mercenary died a lot, so. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this setup. Faster run walk is nice though. Try and spread as much Rabies damage as I can. Didn't mean to do that. So mobility is nice. Overall, I definitely think it's a lot better to do the previous setup though, because the Merc helps out a little bit. Yeah, not overall. This was suggested to on Discord, and I wanted to try it for the sake of the video. But, yeah. If you just stay on the main hand, same idea. Spread as much poison as we can. Circle back with Harmony. Nothing. Too bad you can't teleport in werewolf form. Just make the Druid too overpowered. I'd say maybe at the start of the run, the idea of switching back and forth might not be the best idea. Just kind of like using it to get to new areas a little bit quicker. I will just leave that as a smaller packet 3. I'm kind of using it to just get to other areas quicker and then just spread and stay in your regular form, because when you switch, you're losing all the extra facets from the Monarch and stuff on the offhand, so. And all those cows go down.
No.
Cow run's just about up. Ruby. Always collect as many gems as you possibly can for crafting, because you never know what you can get. Now that I have the rumored Bramble too, I do kind of want to mess around with the Plague Javazon. You can even do a low res one on swap and all that crazy stuff. Let's leave the single guys by themselves.
No.
And unless there's one more big cow pack, call it a video. I will say that I do think my preferred version is using Mercenary. It's just nice having a little extra support with like the Decrepify Reaper's tool setup. There we go, that's everything killed. That wraps up this run. Thank you guys for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to try out this build for something different, if you're a little bit bored of D2, I highly recommend it. It's definitely very niche, but somewhat effective. Of course, it's never going to be like your standard Necromancer or Javazon running through cows. But yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you could throw a like on it, share it, and even consider subscribing if you're new to my channel. I post new weekly content and stream on a consistent basis, so your support with a sub on YouTube and a follow on Twitch would be really nice. Other than that, guys, hope you have a fan-frickin-tastic day, and I'll see you on my next video or live stream. Peace out.